You know what's funny about narcissists? They can spend months, even years, convincing you that you are replaceable. And yet, the moment you finally break free, they start acting in ways that scream they regret losing you. The trick is they'll never admit it. They'll hide it under pride, denial, and games. But today, I'm going to break down the undeniable signs that a narcissist is kicking themselves for letting you go. Even if they'll take that secret to the grave, you know. There's something almost predictable about the way a narcissist operates after you've walked away. They spend so much time acting like they don't need you, like they're perfectly fine without you. And then out of nowhere, you see their name pop up on your phone. No context, no explanation, just a quick, casual, hey, just checking in, or maybe, hope you've been well. On the surface, it sounds innocent, maybe even polite. But trust me, it's not casual. Nothing with a narcissist is casual. That message is a calculated move, and it's one of the most telling signs that they regret losing you, even if they'll never admit it. What's important to understand is that narcissists thrive on maintaining a tether to you. They don't like closed doors. Even if they were the ones who ended things, even if they swore they were moving on, they still want that invisible thread to remain intact. Why? Because in their world, people aren't relationships, they're resources. And when they lose access to a resource, it's not just about missing you as a person, it's about losing the benefits you brought to their life. Maybe it was your emotional support. Maybe it was your stability. Maybe it was the way you made them feel important. Whatever it was, once it's gone, the absence stings. So that text, that random call, that accidental email, it's their way of seeing if the door is still cracked open. They'll keep the tone light to mask their intentions. They might say something like, I saw this and thought of you, or do you still go to that coffee place? The content isn't what matters. The fact that they reached out at all is the real message. They're fishing for a reaction, and here's the key. It's not about whether your reply is positive or negative. To them, any response means they still have an emotional grip on you. Now, you might be wondering, why not just admit they miss you? Why not say, I regret what happened? The answer is pride. Narcissists operate from a place of superiority, and to openly admit regret would mean lowering themselves, even if just for a moment. They'd rather dress their longing up as curiosity or politeness than expose the vulnerability that regret brings. So they hide behind these just checking in messages. It's their way of saying, I still care, but I'm not going to let you see me sweat. And here's the tricky part. For someone who still has lingering feelings, these little breadcrumbs can be tempting to follow. You might start to wonder if they've changed. You might interpret their contact as a sign that they want to make amends. But more often than not, it's not about genuine change. It's about testing if you're still emotionally available to them, if you still have space for them in your mind. Because if you do, that means they still hold some control. Another thing to notice is the timing. These messages tend to appear right when you're starting to move on. You're feeling lighter, happier, maybe even excited about new possibilities. And boom, there they are, interrupting your progress. It's almost as if they can sense it. They'll re-enter your world just enough to remind you of their presence, stirring up old feelings and doubts. And make no mistake, that's intentional. It's not always conscious, but it's definitely strategic. It's also worth pointing out that these pop-ins rarely come with real accountability. They won't open the conversation by addressing the hurt they caused. They won't say, I've been thinking about how I treated you and I want to apologize. Instead, it's vague, shallow contact designed to put the ball in your court. They want you to be the one to bring up the past, to invite them back in, to make it safe for them to reinsert themselves into your life without having to do the hard work of owning their behavior. So when you get that unexpected message, don't just look at the words. Look at the pattern. Think about when it's coming, why it's coming, and how it makes you feel. That's where the truth lies. Because a narcissist who truly didn't care would stay silent, but a narcissist who regrets losing you will find any excuse, no matter how small, to knock on that door again, hoping you'll let them in. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is keep it closed. One of the most common signs a narcissist regrets losing you is when they start quietly orbiting your life. They may not speak to you directly, but suddenly they're everywhere, watching your Instagram stories the second you post them, like in a photo from 3 months ago, or mysteriously showing up at that restaurant you used to go to. It's subtle, but it's deliberate. They want to see what you're doing, who you're with, and most importantly, how you're doing without them. This isn't about staying connected in a healthy way. It's about staying in control from a distance. A narcissist hates the feeling of being cut off completely. Even if they've moved on publicly, even if they're dating someone new, they can't resist peeking into your life. They need that window into your world because it reassures them they still matter. And even if they don't comment or message, their silent presence is meant to remind you that they're still there. They want you to notice, because if you notice, it means you're still aware of them. That's the fuel they're after. The irony is they often disguise this behavior as coincidence. If they bump into you at the gym, it's, oh, I didn't know you still came here. If they suddenly follow your new TikTok account, it's, I just stumbled across it. But deep down, you know better. It's not random. Narcissists are strategic. They may have asked mutual friends about your routines. They may have searched for you online just to see what pops up. They may have even created fake profiles to check in without you knowing it's them. They don't have to be physically present to insert themselves into your life. Digital breadcrumbs are more than enough to make their point. What's fascinating is how their interest seems to spike when you start moving on. If they see you smiling more, going out with friends, or achieving something you once told them you dreamed about, it triggers something inside them. That's when the passive observation kicks into overdrive. They'll be glued to your updates, dissecting every post and reading between the lines for signs of who you're seeing or how you're feeling. It's not about genuine curiosity. It's about control. They want to monitor your progress so they can adjust their own narrative, whether that's trying to lure you back in or making sure they appear to be doing better than you. Sometimes they won't limit themselves to just watching. They might leave small traces of their presence, liking a picture, reacting to a story, leaving a vague comment, just enough to stir a reaction without actually starting a conversation. This is psychological bait. They want you to think, why are they looking at my stuff? Or what do they mean by that? The moment you start wondering, they've succeeded, because if they can make you pause, even for a second, they still have influence. Now, it's easy to mistake this behavior for longing or affection, and that's where people get pulled back in. You might think maybe they're checking in because they care, or maybe they're realizing what they lost. But here's the reality: a narcissist's regret doesn't usually come from love in the way most people understand it. It comes from losing a source of validation. By watching you from a distance, they're keeping a lifeline to that validation, even if it's just in their own mind. If you really pay attention, you'll notice that their presence is rarely consistent. They tend to appear in bursts, a cluster of interactions and views, followed by silence. This push-pull is intentional. It keeps you off balance. It makes you wonder what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and why they suddenly went quiet again. In a way, this cycle is their way of maintaining the emotional confusion that keeps the door cracked open. This quiet stalking isn't harmless. It's an attempt to keep you within their emotional reach without having to take the risk of facing you directly. It's a power play, a way of saying, I'm still watching, without giving you the satisfaction of a conversation. And for them, as long as they're in the background of your mind, they haven't really lost you. And sometimes the only real power you have left is to make sure they stay in the background where they belong. One of the most subtle yet revealing signs a narcissist regrets losing you is when they start mirroring your growth. It's not just about them noticing you've changed. It's about them quietly trying to adopt those changes for themselves. Maybe you've picked up a new hobby, started dressing differently, or developed new habits that reflect your progress and healing. Then out of nowhere, you see them doing the same thing. At first, it might seem like coincidence, but when you look closely, you realize it's a pattern. They're taking cues from your life because deep down, they know you're evolving in ways they couldn't or wouldn't when you were together. This isn't just imitation for the sake of self-improvement. It's strategic. A narcissist has a deeply rooted need to maintain a sense of relevance in your mind. If they can subtly reflect the positive changes you've made, it keeps them tethered to your image of them. It's like they're saying, see, I could still be the person you wanted me to be all along. It's their way of making sure you don't completely close the chapter, because now they're appearing to align with the very growth you once wished they'd embrace. In a healthy relationship, seeing someone you once cared about improve their life could be a good thing. But with a narcissist, the motivation is rarely pure. It's not about genuine self-development. It's about image and positioning. They want you to notice. They want you to think maybe they've finally changed. And if they can plant that thought in your head, it opens a door for them to re-enter your life without having to acknowledge the hurt they caused. You might see it in small ways first. If you've started working out and posting about it, suddenly they're talking about their new fitness routine. If you've shifted toward a more positive, grounded mindset, they start sharing quotes and content that mimic your values. If you've taken up a creative passion, they find a way to showcase a similar interest. And it's not that these activities are bad in themselves. It's the timing and the intent that give it away. They weren't doing these things before. They're doing them now when you're no longer accessible in the same way because it serves a purpose. This mirroring can also be a form of competitive regret. Seeing you thrive without them can trigger feelings of inadequacy, and instead of facing those feelings, they try to match your progress as if to prove to themselves and to you that they're not falling behind. In their mind, if they can parallel your growth, they can rewrite the narrative. They can frame it as we're on the same page. Again, even though the reality is that you reach that page through real work and self-reflection, while they're simply copying the cover without reading the book. What makes this tactic so effective for them is that it's hard to call out. If you confront them about it, they'll say, I've always been interested in this, or it's just a coincidence. And because it's not inherently negative behavior, it can blur the lines for you. It can make you wonder if maybe they're finally getting it, maybe they've grown into the person you hoped they'd become. But the truth is, real growth requires accountability, and mirroring your progress without addressing the past is just another form of manipulation. Sometimes this copying goes beyond lifestyle changes and seeps into personality traits. If you've become more confident, you'll see them trying to project confidence too. If you've developed stronger boundaries, they might pretend to respect those same values when talking to others. It's an attempt to rebuild their image in your eyes, to create a version of themselves that feels familiar yet improved, a version that might tempt you into letting your guard down. The deeper layer here is that by adopting your growth, they're trying to stay part of your story. They can't bear the thought of you evolving into someone completely unreachable to them. So they adjust themselves just enough to feel like they still fit into the picture, even if only in theory. And that's the thing about a narcissist regret. It's rarely about who you are now and more about the control they had over who you were then. By mirroring your growth, they're hoping to keep a hold on that influence, even if they have to disguise it as personal progress. Because in their mind, if they can become the person they think you want, maybe you'll forget why you left in the first place. Another sign that a narcissist regrets losing you is when they start sending subtle messages through mutual friends or acquaintances. It's rarely direct. They won't come to you and say, I've been thinking about you, because that would mean swallowing their pride and admitting they feel the loss. Instead, they'll plant little pieces of information with people you both know, knowing full well that those words will eventually find their way back to you. It often starts innocently enough. A friend might casually say, oh, I saw them the other day. They asked how you've been. Or maybe a coworker tells you they were talking about that trip you went on. These moments can feel harmless at first, but they're calculated. A narcissist uses this indirect route because it lets them test the waters without risking rejection. They can gauge your reaction from a safe distance, all while keeping their ego intact. This tactic also allows them to control the narrative. By choosing what they say and who they say it to, they can influence how you see them without ever having a direct conversation. Maybe they tell a mutual friend, I've been working on myself, or I really hope they're happy. On the surface, these comments seem positive, maybe even heartfelt, but the reality is that they're often designed to stir curiosity or make you wonder if things could be different now. It's a form of emotional bait, and the messenger, often unintentionally, becomes part of their strategy. What's even more telling is when they drop little hints that blur the line between regret and competition. They might mention new things they're doing, knowing it will be passed along to you. I've started volunteering, or I just got promoted, are not just updates. They're subtle ways of saying, look, I'm doing well too. It's their way of reminding you they still exist in your world and in their mind are still worth your attention. Sometimes these indirect messages aren't even meant to be flattering. They might try to spark jealousy by mentioning someone new in their life or a big adventure they're taking. Even if the intention seems to be moving on, the fact that they make sure it gets back to you reveals that they're still watching your reaction. It's about keeping an emotional thread between you, whether through curiosity, nostalgia, or even irritation. As long as you're thinking about them, they feel they haven't truly lost you. This approach is also a way for them to avoid accountability. By going through other people, they can appear to be reaching out without actually having to face the consequences of their actions. If you respond negatively, they can play it off and say, I was just asking about them, nothing more. But if you respond with openness or curiosity, they take it as an opportunity to step in more directly. Either way, they've tested the boundary without putting themselves on the line. For someone who's healing and moving forward, these indirect touches can be confusing. They can stir old emotions, make you question their motives, and even tempt you to re-engage. That's the exact effect they're hoping for. They want to be back in your head, even if only in passing thoughts. The key thing to remember is that true reconciliation or genuine regret doesn't hide behind other people. If they were truly ready to take responsibility, they wouldn't need a messenger. They'd come to you themselves, own their actions, and have the conversation directly. The reason they don't is because these small filtered communications give them all the benefits without any of the risks. They can maintain the illusion of caring, spark your curiosity, and still walk away untouched if you don't respond the way they want. It's safe for them, and that safety is exactly why it's such a common move when a narcissist regrets losing someone. Because for them, regret isn't about making things right. It's about making sure they're never fully erased from your life. One of the clearest signs a narcissist regrets losing you is when their social media suddenly turns into a highlight reel, as if they're living their best life without a single care in the world. Out of nowhere, their posts become more frequent, more glamorous, more polished. Vacations, parties, new clothes, new people, every image and caption crafted to project happiness, success, and confidence. But here's the thing, much of it isn't for the world at large. It's for you. It's meant to be seen by you to make you wonder if they've moved on, if they're better off, or if you somehow missed out on the best version of them. This is a game of perception, and narcissists are masters at it. They understand the power of appearances, and they use that to send silent messages. The message they want you to receive is, look what you're missing. They want you to second guess your decision, to imagine that maybe they've changed, that maybe they're happier now without you. It's an indirect way of getting under your skin without ever having to pick up the phone or send a text. If you pay attention, you'll notice that this behavior often ramps up right after you've started to heal or show signs of moving forward. The timing isn't a coincidence. It's triggered by the idea that you might actually be letting go. They want to disrupt that momentum, to plant seeds of doubt, so you'll start thinking about them again. And in the narcissist's mind, if they can get you to think about them, they've regained some control. The irony is that much of what they post isn't an accurate reflection of their life. That extravagant trip, it might have been planned months ago. That big group of friends, they could be acquaintances they barely know. That smiling selfie, it could have been taken on a day they were actually feeling miserable. Social media is the perfect stage for a narcissist to create the illusion of a life that's thriving, whether it's true or not. Sometimes this showing off has an edge of competition. If they see you doing well, they'll post something to try to outshine you. You post about a promotion, they suddenly have a big announcement too. You share pictures from a weekend getaway, they're posting from a more exotic location. It's not just about proving they're okay, it's about proving they're doing better. That's their way of rewriting the story, making it seem like they're the one who came out on top after the relationship ended. What makes this so effective is the way it can stir emotions without direct interaction. You're not having a conversation with them, you're just seeing snapshots. And because you can't see the full picture, your mind starts to fill in the gaps. You might catch yourself wondering, do they really look happier? Or maybe they've finally grown. That uncertainty is exactly what they want. It keeps you emotionally connected, even if only through curiosity or comparison. But beneath the surface, this behavior reveals something deeper. People who are genuinely happy and at peace don't feel the need to broadcast it in a way that targets a specific person. They live it quietly, confidently, without using it as a weapon. A narcissist, on the other hand, will amplify and exaggerate to make sure you notice. It's not enough for them to be happy. They need you to see it, to feel it, and to react to it. This pattern is particularly telling when they start showcasing traits or activities you once wished they would embrace. If you wanted them to be more adventurous, suddenly they're skydiving. If you wanted them to be more social, now they're posting about endless nights out. It's performative, and it's designed to make you think, they've become everything I wanted, but without me. And that thought is exactly what feeds their sense of power. The truth is, much of this best life performance is just another way of keeping you hooked, even if from a distance. They may not say they miss you, they may never admit regret, but the show they put on is often one of the loudest confessions they'll ever make. Because when someone truly moves on, they stop needing to prove they're better without you. Another unmistakable sign that a narcissist regrets losing you is when they start trying to one-up your success. It's almost like the moment they notice you're doing well, whether that's in your career, your personal growth, or your relationships, they suddenly launch into overdrive to match it or surpass it. This isn't about healthy motivation or friendly competition. It's about re-establishing themselves as the one who's winning after the breakup, because in their mind, life is always a scoreboard, and they can't stand the idea of being behind. It often starts subtly. Maybe you land a promotion, and a week later, they're posting about a big career move of their own. Maybe you start a new relationship, and almost instantly, they're flaunting a new partner on social media. It could even be as simple as you taking up a new hobby, and suddenly they've mastered something even more impressive. The timing isn't coincidence. It's reactionary. They see your progress, And instead of being happy for you or focusing on their own authentic growth, they feel challenged, almost threatened, and they respond by trying to overshadow it. This behavior is rooted in insecurity. A narcissist's sense of self-worth is fragile, and when they see you thriving without them, it disrupts the narrative they've built in their own mind. That they were the prize, that you'd struggle without them, that they had the upper hand. Your success becomes proof that you don't need them, and that realization stings in a way they can't admit. So rather than sit with that discomfort, they try to rewrite the story by showing they're doing even better. Sometimes it's obvious, like them rushing into visible achievements. Other times it's more subtle, like dropping comments to mutual friends about their recent wins, knowing those comments will find their way back to you. And if they can't actually achieve something comparable, they might exaggerate or outright fabricate accomplishments just to maintain the illusion. In their mind, perception is reality, so as long as they can make it look like they're ahead, they've won. What's interesting is that this competitive streak often comes with a lack of genuine joy. When someone is truly succeeding, you can feel the authenticity behind it. There's pride, gratitude, a sense of fulfillment. But with a narcissist, the energy is different. Their successes feel rushed, forced, and oddly timed. They're not celebrating for themselves, they're performing for an audience, and you are the audience that matters most. The danger in this behavior is that it can pull you back into old patterns. You might feel tempted to compare yourself to them, to measure your worth against what they're showing. That's exactly the trap they're setting. By turning everything into a competition, they keep you emotionally engaged. Even if you're not talking, even if you're not seeing each other, they've created a dynamic where you're still reacting to each other's lives. And for them, that's enough to feel like they haven't lost their influence over you. It's also worth noting that this one-upmanship isn't always confined to achievements. Sometimes it's about appearance or lifestyle. If you start working out and looking healthier, they might suddenly have a personal trainer and a brand new wardrobe. If you post about traveling, they might book a trip somewhere more exotic. It's not about the experience. It's about the optics. They want a project that they're still the more desirable, more accomplished one. The irony is the very fact that they're trying so hard to outdo you is the proof that they're watching. People who have truly moved on don't measure their worth against their ex's progress. They don't need to. They're focused on their own path. But when a narcissist is in regret mode, they can't help but keep you as a reference point for their life. They're constantly checking where you are so they can adjust their own moves to stay ahead. And that's the real giveaway. The competition itself is the confession. Because if they genuinely didn't care, there'd be nothing to compete with. At the end of the day, the truth is simple. When a narcissist regrets losing you, they'll rarely come right out and say it. Instead, they leave a trail of behaviors, small but deliberate, that speak louder than any apology they'll never give. The random check-ins, the quiet watching, the mirroring of your growth, the messages through mutual friends, the curated best life they want you to see, and the constant need to outshine you. Each one is a silent admission that your absence left a mark. But recognizing these signs isn't about feeding your ego or wondering if you should let them back in. It's about reclaiming your clarity and power. Because the real victory isn't in proving they regret it. It's in knowing you've moved on, healed, and no longer need their validation to define your worth.